Hey guys, Mustached Tom here to review the movie Alien Romulus. So, I've seen the trailer for this a number of times, and boy, does this franchise have a pretty lengthy history. That being that Alien 1 and Aliens were quite the sequel, and ever since then, Alien 3 moving onward has been a downward spiral of nonsense and confusion. Seems to be the general pattern of Alien. And when at least the trailer for Romulus was looking good, / even promising. So I was like, okay, I'm willing to give this one a shot. See if they can finally figure out where they went wrong. So let's get into it, as objectively as possible. With that being said, the movie opens up with our little character, flying through space, and we're taking our sweet time. And, we meet our young characters in Rain and Eddie. Eddie being a robot or android, replicant, whatever you would want to, whatever the name is of this. And he is her caretaker. She is convinced by a group of her friends, that they want to explore a planet far, far away, and it will take a certain lengthy number of time to get there. So, they use methods of just getting on a ship, this crew, with Eddie as sort of the ability to helm them to the other thing that they come across, the Romulus, that being. And they're simply off, with zero regard to, anyone checking ships suddenly taking off, and zero suspicion. And not a lot of character developing happening thus far outside of, Rain and this robot. There are 5 other characters who are in this cluster of group. There are 2 guys whose names I don't remember except Tyler, and I only know his name. And then there's this pregnant girl whose name I also don't know. And there is another young woman whose name I also don't know, who's bald. She's the first one to go. Anyway. So, we're already following a pretty horrific setup. And let me just address it right now. The character writing isn't great outside of the 2 main characters. And even them aren't well built upon. There was something greatly appreciated about just seeing the crew in Alien just have a little, have their scenes of just sort of goofing off, alleviating the earlier scenes of the movie, as it were. Letting us get to know who these characters are before shit hits the fan. This movie had an opportunity to do that when they introduce our characters, our main characters to our sub-main characters, I guess I'll call them, but they just immediately leave to the ship, and then things start to fall apart little by little from there. Instead, I think this movie was in desperate need of I probably want to say 10 minutes added to the intro, and then 30 or so minutes cut from the ending is what this movie is, as I'll come to the conclusion of for this review, to fix everything that is wrong with this movie. So that's what this movie needs in its intro, is a little bit more time to get us to know who these characters are. Unfortunately, we don't have any time to learn who these characters are, so they can just become cannon fodder for later. Essentially, is what I'm getting at here. So they make their way to the ship. Like I said, the three of them head into the Romulus, while the other three or so stay behind. So it's Andy and the two lads, Tyler and the other guy, whose name I don't know. And then the pregnant lady stays aboard. I think later on, the bald chick, like, they get stuck in a room, I believe is what the setup of this is, to allow the other three to start moving toward them. So they heat up access to the facehuggers, plural, and they're trapped in the room, and one of the facehuggers manages, like in the poster, to grapple on to the bald chick, as you can see on the poster there. So, non-spoiler there, I guess, because it's on the poster. So she gets face-hugged. And, after that, they arisen, another classic of alien lore, Rook, from the first Alien movie, who gives them the exposition about how these aliens, or xenomorphs as he puts them, because that's the official term, work. At least on a basic level. So, they actually do a smart thing, for once. They freeze up the facehugger's tail, but unfortunately they took too long to do this. So she's burst through at a point, not too long later. Because we gotta rush through this movie, because there's no time. I believe, the first in Alien, the original, someone gets, the face hug thing, and then they're fine for a while. I remember this being the case, and then, they're all eating dinner, everything's fine, and then that's the first scene of, everything getting out of control, right? That's the memeable bit on top of that, right? But point being is that there was a large gap of time where it was wonder what that was about. Maybe nothing happened. Maybe a great deal happened. And sure enough, we're gonna skip all of the space to just say, nope, she's dead. So there's one character down. I don't know who she was. I don't know what she brought to the table. Who knows? Because the movie didn't bother explaining who this bold young girl was. And yes, the rest of the cast, except Andy, are these young people who know how to pilot stuff, I guess. It would have given a little bit of nice exposition to figure out how they knew how to do any of this stuff naturally, but hey, maybe that could have worked in with some character building on top of all that, but no, none of that. None to be found in this movie. Meanwhile, Eddie, our bot, is given a new directive when they find a chip of Rook or some other android, or him, I don't know which one it was. Anyway, there's this whole thing about him having a new, temperament and new attitude towards the mission, as it were, for Weyland-Yutani. And during this, or, between this, bits that I've been mentioning, Andy, I believe, is the other guy, who shock prods one of the alien things, like a pod, and then is killed for it. And then, Navario, I believe that's the pregnant lady. I wrote my notes as spared for a little bit here. She goes through quite an ordeal on her own. No, that's not true. Kate is the pregnant one. Sorry, I got my names mixed up because, and I wouldn't have done that probably if I knew who these characters were, but hey, what can you do? So Kate is stuck by herself. She's pregnant. She falls after opening this door, after seeing the alien rebirth after the guy fails and gets killed. And this is all over the radio, which causes... And the guy who has the radio, Tyler, does not turn it off immediately, which would think to do, or at least attempt to whisper, but not really. He kind of just yells, and then that causes the several facehuggers that they roomed the temperature up to match it up so that they could walk through it easily. Now they have to run through it because the xenomorphs are being alerted by the sounds. We see the alien drag two bodies away. I'm not sure what the point of that was, since we don't really... There's not really a payoff to it. I guess it's just feeding or whatever. We don't see it, but whatever. So the alien stabs Kate in the chest. Not to death, but, you know, pretty injuriously so. And with Andy working with the company, he's like, something blood. And boy, does the movie fall apart even more. This is the moment this is brought up. So, they do what I think is the impossible in this movie. They somehow extract xenomorph blood, keeping in mind that the lore of xenomorph blood is that it's acidic, meaning it has acid all over it, as a defensive measure. They somehow manage to avoid all of that, you know, that acid, somehow scoop up all the blood, and then, you know, capsize it. Which, I find that impossible to believe, but here we are. Again. And not to mention that they bring up or Rook does anyway, Prometheus. Because of Alien Prometheus. Because we have to connect the movies, even the terrible ones. So he's trying to recreate Prometheus during this section, which I don't know if this is... I forget if Prometheus is even a prequel or a sequel. I don't even remember. It doesn't matter. It's a dumb movie in the Alien franchise, like a lot of them are. And really, you could have kept this real simple. You didn't need any of this Prometheus stuff entering in this movie either. I think this should have been completely cut from the movie, and it would have been fine. So anyway, so they begin moving, and spoiler alert, I guess Tyler also just gets stabbed, but he gets stabbed and pulled away to death, I think, at this point in the movie. Meanwhile, Kate decides to jab herself with said blood that I was just talking about. Even though, you know, they were like, she was being told that if she could go in the chrono sleep, that she'd be fine, but she decides, for whatever purposes, that, you know, even having Rook talk to her is like, oh, I guess that she's just gonna follow that, I guess. Though, she didn't know who Rook was. Why would she believe anything from this thing, right? I don't know. So she takes it. Surprise, surprise. Meanwhile, we are following the only remaining characters being Rain and Andy, or Randy, or whatever his name was. Andy or Randy. So, they get in this hallway at some point, where now there are several aliens, plural, even though it's called Alien Singular Romulus, so already false advertising on top of, you know, the stupider bit than it being deceptive on titling, but whatever. I can accept that much, but what happens after the aliens is ridiculous. So anyways, she uses the gravity that has been shown throughout the movie to go on and off to turn it off and then use her gun to blow up the aliens, or, you know, blast them, and have the acid sort of trapped in the air, and then to move through it, or move, you know, alongside it, not making sure it can blast her, and then she's dead. So, you know, there are a few good moments within this terrible film. I'll say that much, just to be as, again, objective as possible. But, unfortunately, having a cool scene does not save a movie in any way or shape. You have to make sure you have the proper building blocks, and then you have to also make sure simultaneously that your ending isn't complete dog shit. Which we're getting to. So they managed to avoid that. And they make their way to, they're in this like corridor hallway thing where like it's Rain and Andy or Randy or whatever his name is. And they're both on the thing, and then the alien grabs her, Rain, that being, from falling to her death. And there's another facehugger there to be like, to illustrate that it was like, gonna like present it to the facehugger to be like, we need more aliens. Fine. Then we have Andy jump down and kill the alien. I think the facehugger too, I don't remember, but point being is that brings it down to the bottom floor. And then they have the audacity to once again to be like, hey, you remember that good movie, Alien, or Aliens in this case, the sequel? Remember that good movie where they said, stay away from her, you ugly bitch? Let's use that here. Because why not just utilize the things that will make people clap for nostalgia's sake? But it makes no sense why he would say it, but he's gonna say it anyway. Because, you know, people can just take other people's catchphrases out of context and, you know, just say it for their own purposes. And, you know, depending on when this movie takes place, it just takes away from Aliens, if not anything. Especially if it takes place before Aliens. Which apparently it might take place before Aliens, but after Alien. Anyway. So, they think they're fine. Unfortunately, they're not fine, because the movie decides that having aliens and facehuggers was not enough. But remember the blood? Oh yeah, we weren't done with that yet. It turns out that the blood somehow also speeds up the process of human pregnancy, I guess. So, Kate's now ready to give birth already, and does so. And, I kid you not, gives birth to an acid baby alien hybrid thing. I wish I were joking, And I wish that wasn't also a reference to Prometheus, which, like, clearly they said it in the movie, so I'm not sure why people are trying to play it off like, oh, this isn't like Prometheus at all. It's like, they literally said, Rook literally said in the dialogue, we're going to make Prometheus, or a Prometheus. It's like, why? Why predate stupidity with more stupidity like this? It baffles me that this is what people script, and, you know, because for the most part of the movie, apparently, at least according to some other reviewers, the rest of it's good, so even this last bit must be good. But I'm not here to say that, because that's bullshit. I'm sorry. When you lack the writing knowledge that this movie possesses, you're just gonna get called out for it. And, you know, it clearly needed more breathing room toward the beginning, and it clearly needed to cut off where they take off the last alien. They could have had him make a pun instead of, because that was his whole bit, right, Andy, the android, about aliens. I don't know. I'm pretty sure you can think of something, right? Instead of having him completely say something that feels completely out of character for him to say. So there's that. But then you have the audacity, again, to make a baby acid alien that's super tall and looks pretty much like the Prometheus. Anyway, if you remember what that thing looked like, they looked super tall, so it's a one-for-one recreation, I guess. And begins to attack our people, our remaining people, that being Kate included, she's dead now, and Rain and Andy. And they get super duper lucky. She hits 3 of these, like, disconnecting pod, like, levers. She needs to hit 4 of them. She hits 3 of them. She gets disconnected. She's, like, out in the... She's, like, holding on to a rope. The baby alien is super tall now, and is, like, you know, hunting her down or whatever. And due to her luckily, like, wavering around in just the right way, she just so happens to hit the 4th one, and gets the 4th, the section that the baby alien thing was on, to get shunted into the asteroids. Thus remaining, her being the remaining character, and Andy being the remaining android, and that being the end of Alien Romulus. And God, Jesus Christ, I can't believe people are falling for this. This is just as bad as most of the other Alien movies. This does not live up to Alien or Aliens remotely. Like, sure, you can call it the 3rd best movie, but that doesn't make it good. It just makes it slightly better than the rest of them, visually speaking. Other than that, the writing is awful. I don't know, again, I wish people would realize when there's just a lack of character development happening. Because that is exactly what this opening provides, is a lack of character development outside the main character. And it's like, you had the time, you clearly had the time, and you filled it with absolute bullshit with the whole Kate pregnancy thing. You could have cut that entire segment, which would have been like, what, 10-15 minutes? You could have slotted to the beginning of the movie to let us know and understand this crew of youngsters to the extent, like, you can do a lot in 15 minutes with characters. A lot. So much so. I mean, sometimes even a sentence and, you know, a good performance can tell you a lot about a character, but this isn't it. The performances just aren't quite there yet with these obviously quite younger actors, and the writing is even worse, quite frankly. They did not have the material to work with, if I'm being brutally honest. So I might go out on a whim and say, I think this might be one of the worst Alien movies, if not the worst, honestly. I mean, maybe I would have to rewatch Prometheus and all the other worst bad Alien movies to see if that's really the case. But I mean, come on. This is a joke. If you are suggesting that this is, the third best movie, I don't know. I think I would struggle. I think, honestly, despite Alien 3's stupidity in terms of, what they decided to do early on with Ripley and all that, I think outside of the stupid decision and the ending, I think the rest of that movie is actually fine, believe it or not. From what I can remember of it, anyway. And they allude to the whole, Alien 3 in this movie with the whole, again, the pregnant alien thing. Because that was, one of the larger bits in that movie, was that it created, the resurrected Ripley created that alien that could sort of say mama or whatever was screaming at the end of Alien 3. It took from that. And that's supposed to be good, remember. It's why? You're just taking from Alien 3. The stupidity parts of it. And you're maintaining them. You're maintaining the parts from Prometheus that made Prometheus terrible. You're taking the awful parts of all of the movies, and you're still saying that they're part of the movies. It's remove that shit. The only Alien movies that should be canon are Alien and Aliens, till this day. I honestly am still on board with that, after seeing Alien Romulus. This is a disaster. It takes from really poor examples of other Alien movies. It doesn't brilliantly write the characters in a way that it feels like we're following a crew that we want to survive, and thus enhances the tensions of anything. I just felt like, they're just doing a stupid thing. They're moving, they're dying, they're moving, they're dying. It's let the movie breathe. The movie has no room to breathe. And that's the biggest issue. And again, it ends with this bullshit. So, honestly, if I were to give this a score, I probably would go with a 2 or a 3 out of 10, if I'm being brutally honest here. I mean, there's just not enough here. But with the allotted stupidity at the end, and barely any writing at the beginning, it's just not a strong movie. Visuals don't save movies. I don't care if it looks good. I mean, sure, spectacle. You can fool some people with spectacle. And it's fun, you can say it's a fun movie, but saying it's a good movie is a completely different beast. Which is what I'm trying to say, is it's not a good movie. It's awful. And it's one of those experiences where it's well, I'm almost rooting for the aliens at this point. And you know how many reviews of horror movies I've gone through where I've said that that's never a good thing? Too many to count already. So yeah, this was an awful movie. It's awful. I don't know what else to say. That's my review of the movie. If you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One, head over to my petition, help out smaller YouTubers. Second, to my PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly. And third, to my Discord server, you can join, collab, shield, all that cool stuff. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.